A sequel nobody wanted made Star Wars cool again for one brief moment. A Chinese fantasy film crushed Marvel without even opening in the US. And Disney made $1.6 billion off a remake their own animators hated. These are the highest-grossing movies of all time, updated for 2025. The original Frozen was a cultural nuke. This sequel? Less impact, but still an avalanche at the box office. Disney threw everything at it. Elaborate visuals, a darker tone, and Into the Unknown as a new anthem. They even brought in a mythic forest of emotions subplot that confused half the parents and thrilled every kid under 12. It didn't match the original zeitgeist, but it didn't have to. It pulled in $1.45 billion, becoming the highest-grossing animated film of all time, until Inside Out 2 nearly caught up. Nobody expected this to work, but Tom Cruise not only made it happen, he made it a global phenomenon. Filmed practically with real F-18s and insane aerial footage, Maverick ignored every modern studio instinct. No green screens, no de-aging. Cruise made the cast go through actual flight training. He risked his life multiple times, and audiences rewarded him with $1.4 billion, making it the biggest hit of his career. This wasn't just a Fast and Furious sequel, it was Paul Walker's farewell. After his sudden death during production, the film was rewritten mid-shoot, restructured around his character, and finished using CGI and stand-ins from his brothers. The emotional weight was real. Audiences didn't just show up for stunts and cars, they came to say goodbye. The film's final scene, set to "See You Again," hit like a sledgehammer. It became the highest-grossing film in the franchise and earned $1.5 billion globally, including a record-breaking run in China. This was the movie that proved the impossible. Before the Avengers, the idea of combining multiple superhero franchises into one mega movie was considered insane. Marvel made it happen, and Joss Whedon pulled it off before his name went radioactive. It was a risky $220 million bet built on 4 years of setup. One weak link could have collapsed the whole thing. Instead, it broke $1.5 billion, redefined Hollywood's blockbuster formula, and kicked off the MCU's golden age. Studios scrambled to build their own cinematic universes. None of them could copy it. Most failed spectacularly. This was Disney's most controversial victory lap. A so-called live-action remake that was really 100% CGI, but marketed like it wasn't. Critics slammed it for being cold, soulless, and robotic. But nostalgia doesn't care. Audiences showed up in droves, even as animators admitted they were told to tone down the expressions so the animals didn't look too cartoony. Despite the backlash, it became one of the highest-grossing films in Disney history. Beyoncé was promoted more heavily than the director. James Earl Jones re-recorded Mufasa's lines, and they basically just reused his original performance anyway. It made $1.6 billion by playing it as safe as algorithmically possible. And it worked. Universal had no idea this would explode. After Jurassic Park 3 underwhelmed, the franchise sat in limbo for over a decade. Then they handed the reins to Colin Trevorrow, an indie filmmaker with just one feature under his belt, and a $150 million budget. It sounded like a gamble. It turned into one of the biggest box office wins of the decade. The story didn't matter. The nostalgia did all the work. Chris Pratt was just along for the ride. Critics dragged it for being formulaic and lazy, but audiences didn't care. It opened to nearly $525 million globally in its first weekend. It was the highest-grossing non-superhero film since Titanic and launched a trilogy no one needed, but the money made it inevitable. Pixar had been circling the drain. Lightyear flopped. Elemental barely made a ripple. Then came Inside Out 2, a sequel nobody was hyped for, and suddenly it became the studio's highest-grossing film in years. This time the focus was on teenage anxiety, overthinking, and spiraling emotions. But it still connected across age groups. It hit a nerve, and fast. Projections were modest, $80 million opening weekend, but word of mouth turned it into a juggernaut. It rocketed past $1.6 billion and brought Pixar back from the brink right as Disney was quietly cutting its animation budgets behind the scenes. This one practically leaked itself into the stratosphere. Set photos and Reddit rumors kept spoiling the cast. Andrew Garfield lied through his teeth in interviews. Sony denied it all. Fans knew better, and the second the three Spider-Men showed up on screen together, theaters erupted. It pulled in $1.9 billion during a pandemic with zero China release. That's unheard of. All three Spideys shot together in a warehouse disguised as a logistics company to avoid drone leaks. Marvel barely needed to market it. Nostalgia did the heavy lifting. And for Sony, it was a dream. Almost $2 billion without actually needing a coherent plot. This was Marvel's first gamble on tragedy. The villain wins. Half the cast turns to dust. Kids sobbed in theaters. Parents were too stunned to explain it. It was bold, and it worked. Shot back-to-back with Endgame, production was so secretive even the cast didn't get real scripts. Tom Holland was famously banned from knowing anything because he couldn't stop spoiling. Thanos' snap became a cultural event. Memes exploded. Fan theories went nuclear. Despite being part one of two, it felt complete, massive, and final in a way few blockbusters ever do. This was Disney's opening shot with Star Wars, and it landed like a Death Star blast. The movie made $2 billion while essentially remaking A New Hope. But nostalgia pays. The hype was nuclear. Fans camped out. The trailer reaction videos went viral before the trailer even ended. It reintroduced Star Wars to a new generation and brought the franchise roaring back, at least temporarily. Behind the scenes, it was all brand management. J.J. Abrams played it safe. Fans got the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo, and a mystery box of plot holes no one planned to answer. Disney would go on to beat this into the ground by 2019, but for one brief moment, Star Wars was cool again. This sequel is a Chinese box office monster that most Western audiences still haven't heard of. The original Ne Zha was a surprise smash in 2019, raking in $1.4 billion in China alone. Its sequel didn't just build on that, it doubled down and bulldozed past every Hollywood tentpole of 2025. What's wild is that it made over $2.1 billion with almost no Western press, barely any global release push, and minimal crossover appeal. It's a full CG animated fantasy rooted in Chinese mythology, with zero regard for Hollywood conventions, and yet it crushed Marvel, DC, Barbie, Oppenheimer, all of them. This is the disaster movie that almost was a disaster. The budget exploded past $200 million, unheard of at the time, and Fox execs wanted to cut it desperately. James Cameron told them, "You'll have to fire me." They didn't. They gritted their teeth and prayed. Cameron delivered. It won 11 Oscars, became the first film to cross $1 billion, and stayed in theaters for almost a year. Studios had mocked the idea of a romantic epic where everyone already knows the ending. Audiences didn't care. They lined up for the heartbreak. Cameron waited 13 years to drop this. Nobody asked for it. The memes were relentless. But the sequel to Avatar landed like a depth charge. Shot using underwater motion capture, something that didn't even exist before this film, it pushed VFX into new territory and cost up to $460 million. Cameron straight up said, if this didn't perform, he'd cancel the rest. It needed to become a top 5 all-time movie just to break even. It did exactly that. Again. This was Marvel's mic drop. It wrapped up a 22-film saga with a 3-hour epic that actually stuck the landing. The budget was massive, $356 million. The cast was even bigger. Half the movie was shot in secret. Entire scenes were filmed just to throw off leaks. And still, every fan theory exploded into chaos. It temporarily dethroned Avatar, pulled in $2.7 billion, and made Robert Downey Jr. a $75 million payday. It wasn't just a movie. It was a global event, a funeral, and a victory lap rolled into one. After this, the MCU cracked. This is the one that started it all. James Cameron bet everything, his fortune, his career, on a movie about blue aliens and glowing trees. Studio execs panicked when the budget hit $250 million, with marketing pushing the total over $400 million. People mocked the idea. Dances with Smurfs, they called it. But Cameron had built entire technologies just to make it happen. He waited a decade for VFX to catch up. Then he made the highest-grossing film of all time, twice. It's still the king of the box office, proof that betting big sometimes actually works.